Tēnā koutou katoa. Good evening. More figures released today that firmly put the crisis into the cost of living crisis. Bonds for new tenancies show that rents have risen to $175 in the past 5 years. And while median house prices have ticked up in many regions in the past month, are still down 13.9% nationally on this time last year. Aucklanders found out today that they'll have to pay 9.5% more, 9.5% more for their water from July. But there is one group who are doing all right. Bank profits surged to a record high of $7.18 billion after tax, 17.3% higher than a year ago. But as the government chooses to focus on the cost of living, critics argue it's happening at the expense of climate change action. Here's political editor Jenna Lynch.
Flood-damaged fridges as far as the eye can see at this Auckland tip. But buried among this flood rubbish is stuff that shouldn't be. Plastics, recyclable plastics. The government yesterday trashing a policy that would have helped a container recycling scheme.
Because we're bearing in mind we're not doing it. We're not doing it right now. Make sure I've got enough knots in there.
Container return schemes are hugely successful overseas. They work like this. You drop off your drink bottles.
So you just chuck it in.
Off it goes and you get cash. Simple as that.
10 cents.
But simple as it is, it's gone. And that specific policy was a Green Party policy, a commitment in the Labour Greens cooperation agreement, taking action to minimise waste and problem plastics.
We've been working on this together for the last 5 years. It is almost ready to go.
Have you breached your cooperation agreement with the Greens?
No.
It is part of the cooperation agreement, and we are talking to the Prime Minister about how to retrieve that.
The Greens are promised consultation on areas of cooperation in their agreement.
Did they consult with you before doing that, or just give you a heads up they were going to do it?
No, they gave us a heads up.
Would you have expected to be consulted on something like that?
I would have, yes.
There were conversations with the Green Party.
No, why did you not consult with him? You gave him a heads up. Why did you not consult with him?
Oh, well, there were conversations.
It's very disappointing.
Disappointed with the lack of consultation and with Hipkin's focus on the cost of living crisis over the climate crisis.
It's clear that the Prime Minister is very keen to win the election and that he's prepared to do just about whatever it takes to do that.
The government's most expensive cost of living measure to date is the fuel discount, costing $115 million a month. It was announced exactly a year ago today, and documents reveal the government was warned not to do it. Transport officials said the fuel discount wouldn't be targeted at those most likely to be experiencing financial stress from the spike in fuel prices. The officials proposed an alternative, widening the winter energy payment into a more general energy grant, pay it at a higher rate and extend it beyond beneficiaries and superannuitants to workers on lower incomes too. The ministry said their idea best addresses the problem and warned that fuel discounts would be hard to unwind.
I wouldn't rule out doing something different in the future, but at the moment it's still the quickest way that we can get the financial
energy payment.
But I'm not going to play that game.
A review of the policy found the fuel discount would increase carbon emissions by 3,500 tonnes a month. By the time it ends in June, that 15 and a half months adds up to 54,000 tonnes of extra emissions.
Well, I think it's bonkers. I mean, I cannot work out why, especially after two of the worst climate-related disasters in this country's history, you would persist with a policy of subsidising the very pollution that causes climate change in the first place.
The red-green friction heating up as fast as the planet.
Jenna's with us now live from Parliament. And Jenna, what's the government going to do to address the climate crisis?
Firstly, to put that 54,000 tonnes in context, the government says it's a pretty small amount, and they say that one of their projects, replacing a coal boiler with heat pumping at Silver Fern Farms, drove down emissions by 4 times that. Another comparison is the Ministry of Transport says 54,000 tonnes of emissions is the equivalent of taking 18,000 cars off the road. The government has just announced that it will be scrapping the fringe benefit tax on things like e-bikes and scooters, so if companies supply those to employees, they won't have to pay a tax on it. On a larger scale, I understand the government's sort of looking at a twofer policy for this year's budget, trying to tackle both the cost of living and climate. So keep an eye out for something similar to the half-price public transport fares that drive down the cost of travel, but also aim to drive down emissions, aiming to kill 2 crises with 1 stone.
All right, thank you for that. That's political editor Jenna Lynch live from Parliament.